Good evening, everyone. I'm Michael Grandage, and I'm the chair of the Josephine Hart Poetry Foundation, and I'm delighted to welcome you all to the British Library on this National Poetry Day for an evening of poetry about the natural world. This is our 20th year of staging the Poetry Hour here at the library, and it's a huge privilege to be hosted by this great National Library. The Josephine Hart Poetry Foundation was created in 2011 after Josephine's untimely death. Josephine said that poetry saved her life. As a young girl in Mullingar, she was caught in its spell, and as an adult, she shared this passion by creating her poetry hours. The foundation continues her work. Alongside staging 4 poetry readings a year in London and elsewhere, it also supports charities and arts organisations that promote poetry, the performance of poetry, and the performers of poetry. And as such, we give a yearly grant to RADA, the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art, to provide a week-long poetry masterclass for their first-year students, as well as a scholarship for a student in need. Josephine dedicated her first anthology of poetry to the art of the actor, which she believed to be one of the highest. And we're thrilled that 4 times a year, actors come to read for us for no fee at all. Many, like Brian, have done it many times, and it is in recognition of this generosity that we also give a yearly grant to the King George V Fund for Actors, which supports actors and theatre professionals in later life. In addition to this, we're expanding our work with children and young people. In June, we ran a poetry performance competition across 13 state primary schools in the East Midlands. New research is demonstrating the value of speaking and performing in education, showing us how important it is to give children the opportunity to stand up in front of an audience. Asking them to perform poetry asks them to get under the skin of a text, to live it and feel it. And this is a powerful educational tool. Next year, we will be expanding the remit of this competition to a further 20 schools. And this time, we will run actor-led workshops alongside the competition. And these are the first steps of a larger and more ambitious program of work the Josephine Hart Poetry Foundation is doing. So now I'd just like to hand you over to Dr. Mary Wellesley. Mary is a fellow of the Institute of Historical Research and an associate member of the English faculty at Oxford University. She's a writer and literary historian, and most importantly for us tonight, she is the director of the Josephine Hart Poetry Foundation. Thank you.
At the age of 72, W.B. Yeats wrote that he had spent his life clearing out of poetry every phrase written for the eye and reinstating that which is for the ear alone. W.H. Auden was more blunt. No poem that is not better heard than read is good poetry. Josephine Hart, novelist, writer, and poetry advocate, agreed with both Auden and Yeats. She believed that poetry is not for the page alone. It is for the listening audience. Josephine knew that when poetry is performed, and performed well, a strange and beautiful magic happens. The verse speaks to the audience in a primal way. As the poet Seamus Heaney wrote, the voice helps to carry words farther and deeper than the eye. The philosophy behind Josephine Hart's poetry hours was threefold. Firstly, she felt that we understand the work better if we understand something of the poet's life. Secondly, she believed that hearing poetry startles us into a full sense of life. She called poetry a trinity of sound, sense, and sensibility. It was, she said, language caught alive. Finally, Josephine agreed with T.S. Eliot that poetry should be read to us by skilled readers, so that the feeling for syllable and rhythm can penetrate far below the conscious level of thought and feeling, invigorating every word. And so it gives me huge pleasure to introduce our readers for tonight. Brian Cox is an Emmy, Olivier, and Golden Globe-winning actor, celebrated for both stage and screen work. He has won 2 Olivier Awards for Titus Andronicus and Rat in the Skull. His New York credits include St. Nicholas earning a Lucille Lortel Award. On film, Cox is known for the Bourne trilogy. Recently, he starred in Long Day's Journey into Night in London's West End. Nicole Ansari-Cox is a multilingual actor, director, writer, and producer, passionate about climate change and human rights. Awards include Best Director for Messi, AFI Best Ensemble for Son of the South, and the Vanya Ergizan Award. Recent work includes the score at Theatre Royal Bath and the films What a Feeling and Under the Stars. Tim McInnerny's stage work varies from Pravda and scenes from an execution at the National Theatre to What the Butler Saw in the West End. His television work ranges from Blackadder to dramas such as The Serpent, The Line of Beauty, and most recently, One Day. His many films include Notting Hill, Peterloo, and the much-anticipated Gladiator II. Joely Richardson is known for her roles in The Gentleman and Nip Tuck, for which she earned a Golden Globe nomination. Notable film performances include The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo and 101 Dalmatians. She's also appeared in the series The Rook and the movie Red Sparrow. Joely has worked extensively in theatre and earned critical acclaim for her versatility across genres. And before we begin the poetry hour proper, I'd just like to say that it's tradition that we keep our applause for the very end. Tonight's poetry hour has been put together in the mould offered by Josephine. In particular, her anthology evening, The Poet in the Garden. Several of the poems she included in that hour appear again, but tonight we're going to stray beyond the ordered confines of the garden and into the wilderness beyond. Living in the 21st century, we are more divorced from the natural world than our ancestors were, untethered from the rhythms of the seasons, scarcely hearing birdsong in amongst the urban thrum, and encountering wildlife often only as vermin. And so the poetry of the natural world has that capacity to startle us into a full sense of life, as Josephine put it, to make us see and hear and feel anew. Perhaps the earliest fragments of written English verse are carved onto an 8th century stone cross in southwest Scotland. The poem is in the voice of a tree, the tree cut down to make the cross on which Christ was crucified. It's a Christian poem, perhaps even composed to convert our pre-Christian ancestors to the new faith. But what's important is that it's a speaking tree, a tree that weeps and bleeds and feels the agony of its own betrayal. Our delight in the beings of the natural world and our capacity to empathize with them are as old as English poetry itself. Our first section is a selection of poems that celebrate the natural world in different ways, starting with a work by Gerard Manley Hopkins. Hopkins was an ecstatic, born in a family of high Anglicans, but became a Jesuit. On his conversion, he symbolically burnt his poems, but thankfully many remain. His work was turned down as incomprehensible even by Catholic journals. Eventually, his genius, his search for a unifying, sacramental view of human life, so clear in pied beauty, made him one of the 19th century's great poets. The Song of Wandering Angus is an early W.B. Yeats poem about a man who has a vision of a beautiful woman on a riverbank. It's mythic and surrealist. James Joyce said of Yeats, who died in 1939, that he had an imagination no surrealist painter could ever equal. Josephine called Dylan Thomas's Fern Hill one of the greatest celebrations of a country childhood ever. Thomas was born in 1914 in Swansea, a wild poet, lover, and drinker, who was, despite all that, a disciplined artist. There is some mythology that it was all terribly easy for him, but his worksheets show a man who continually labored over every line, as we'll see. Then we're back with Yeats for the Lake Isle of Innisfree, a hymn to places remote and rural, where the peace comes dropping slow. And we finish the section with Philip Larkin's The Trees. Larkin was born in Coventry in 1922. He spent his life working as a professional librarian in Hull. We don't often think of his work as optimistic, but this is a piece of finely tuned optimism about the promise of renewal that the natural world brings. Josephine noted of Larkin that he sets you down immediately within a scene and, in Alan Bennett's phrase, has you firmly by the hand as you cross the finish line. His final lines are masterpieces in themselves. To Pied Beauty.
Pied Beauty by Gerard Manley Hopkins. Glory be to God for dappled things, for skies of coupled colour as a brinded cow, for rose moles all in stipple upon trout that swim, fresh fire coal, chestnut falls, finches' wings, landscape plotted and pieced, fold, fallow, and plough, and all trades, their gear and tackle and trim. All things counter, original, spare, strange, whatever is fickle, freckled, who knows how. With swift, slow, sweet, sour, adazzled, dim, he fathers forth, whose beauty is past change. Praise him.
The Song of Wandering Angus by W.B. Yeats. I went out to the hazel wood because a fire was in my head. I cut and peeled a hazel wand and hooked a berry to a thread. And when white moths were on the wing and moth-like stars were flickering out, I dropped the berry in the stream and caught a little silver trout. When I had laid it on the floor, I went to blow the fire aflame, but something rustled on the floor, and someone called me by my name. It had become a glimmering girl, with apple blossom in her hair, who called me by my name and ran and faded through the brightening air. Though I am old with wandering through hollow lands and hilly lands, I will find out where she is gone and kiss her lips and take her hands and walk among long dappled grass and pluck till time and times are done the silver apples of the moon, the golden apples of the sun.
Fern Hill by Dylan Thomas. Now, as I was young and easy under the apple boughs, about the lilting house, and happy as the grass was green, the night above the dingle starry, time let me hail and climb, golden in the heydays of his eyes. And honoured among wagons, I was prince of the apple towns. And once below a time, I lordly had the trees and leaves trail with daisies and barley down the rivers of the windfall light. And as I was green and carefree, famous among the barns, about the happy yard, and singing as the farm was home, in the sun that is young once only Time, let me play and be golden in the mercy of his means. And green and golden I was huntsman and herdsman. The calves sang to my horn. The foxes on the hills barked clear and cold. And the Sabbath rang slowly in the pebbles of the holy streams. All the sun long it was running, it was lovely. The hay fields high as the house, the tunes from the chimneys. It was air and playing, lovely and watery, and fire green as grass. And nightly under the simple stars, as I rode to sleep, the owls were bearing the farm away. All the moon long I heard, blessed among stables, the nightjars flying with the ricks and the horses flashing into the dark. And then to awake, and the farm, like a wanderer, white with the dew, come back, the cock on his shoulder. It was all shining. It was Adam and maiden. The sky gathered again, and the sun grew round that very day. So it must have been after the birth of the simple light in the first spinning place, the spellbound horses walking warm out of the whinnying green stable onto the fields of praise. And honored among foxes and pheasants by the gay house under the new-made clouds, and happy as the heart was long in the sun born over and over, I ran my heedless ways. My wishes raced through the house, hi, hey, and nothing I cared at my sky-blue trades that time allows in all his tuneful turning, so few and such morning songs before the children, green and golden, follow him out of grace. Nothing I cared in the lamp-white days that time would take me up to the swallow-thronged loft by the shadow of my hand, in the moon that is always rising, nor that riding to sleep I should hear him fly with the high fields and wake to the farm, forever fled from the childless land. Oh, as I was young and easy in the mercy of his means, time held me green and dying, though I sang in my chains like the sea.
The Lake Isle of Innisfree by William Butler Yeats. I will arise and go now, and go to Innisfree, and a small cabin built there of clay and wattles made. 9 beans row will I have there, a hive for the honey bee, and live alone in the bee-loud glade. And I shall have some peace there, for peace comes dropping slow, dropping from the vales of the morning to where the crickets sing. There midnight's all a glimmer, and noon's a purple glow, and evening full of the linnet's wings. I will arise and go now, for always night and day I hear lake water lapping with low sounds by the shore, while I stand on the roadway or on the pavement's gray. I hear it in the deep heart's core.
The Trees by Philip Larkin. The trees are coming into leaf, like something almost being said. The recent buds relax and spread. Their greenness is a kind of grief. Is it then that they are born again and we grow old? No, they die too. Their yearly trick of looking new is written down in rings of grain. Yet still the unresting castles thresh in full-grown thickness every May. Last year is dead, they seem to say. Begin afresh, afresh, afresh.
Our next section is on the poetry of the seasons. Today, a change of seasons might mean a change of wardrobe, but for our ancestors, a change of seasons was the difference between scarcity and abundance, between repletion and hunger, between life and death. It's no wonder, then, that some of our most beautiful and haunting celebrations of the year's course come from the pre-industrial period, or a time when industrialization was just getting underway. We're going to start seasonally in autumn, with John Keats's magnificent poem on the subject. It's almost unbearable to think that Keats died in 1821 from tuberculosis, aged only 25. However, like all brilliant writers, he knew. He wrote to his brother, "I think I shall be among the English poets after my death." And he was so right. To autumn is a visual and sonic tour of vines, apples, gourds, and kernels. It also has arguably the only beautiful use of the word oozing in English literature. After that, we have Emily Bronte's Loud Without the Wind Was Roaring. Bronte died of tuberculosis in 1848 at the age of 30. She's most famous as the author of the novel Wuthering Heights, but she was also a highly accomplished poet. On a cloudy November day, the speaker remembers a song that transports her to the moorland landscape she knew so well from her childhood in Haworth in Yorkshire. To autumn.
To Autumn by John Keats. Season of mists and mellow fruitfulness, close bosom friend of the maturing sun, conspiring with him how to load and bless with fruit the vines that round the thatch eaves run, to bend with apples the mossed cottage trees, and fill all fruit with ripeness to the core, to swell the gourd and plump the hazel shells with a sweet kernel, to set budding more and still more later flowers for the bees, until they think warm days will never cease, for summer has o'erbrimmed their clammy cells. Who hath not seen thee oft amid thy store? Sometimes whoever seeks abroad may find thee sitting careless on a granary floor, thy hair soft lifted by the winnowing wind, or on a half-reaped furrow sound asleep, drowsed with the fume of poppies, while thy hook spares the next swathe and all its twined flowers. And sometimes like a gleaner thou dost keep steady thy laden head across a brook, or by a cider press with patient look thou watchest the last oozings hours by hours. Where are the songs of spring? Aye, where are they? Think not of them, thou hast thy music too, while barred clouds bloom the soft dying day and touch the stubble plains with rosy hue. Then in a wailful choir the small gnats mourn among the river sallows, borne aloft or sinking as the light wind lives or dies. And full-grown lambs loud bleat from hilly bourne, hedge crickets sing, and now with treble soft the redbreast whistles from a garden croft, and gathering swallows twitter in the skies.
Loud Without the Wind Was Roaring by Emily Bronte. Loud without the wind was roaring through the autumnal sky, drenching wet, the cold rain pouring, spoke of winter nigh. All too like that dreary eve did my exiled spirit grieve. It grieved at first, but grief not long. Sweet, how softly sweet it came. Wild words of an ancient song, undefined, without a name. It was spring, and the skylark was singing. Those words, they awakened a spell. They unlocked a deep fountain whose springing nor absence nor distance can quell. In the gloom of a cloudy November, they uttered the music of May. They kindled the perishing ember into fervor that could not decay. Awaken, o'er all my dear moorland, west wind in thy glory and pride. Oh, call me from the valley and lowland to walk by the hill torrent's side. It swelled with the first snowy weather. The rocks, they are icy and hoar, and sullenly waves the long heather, and the fern leaves are sunny no more. There are no yellow stars on the mountain. The bluebells have long died away. From the brink of the moss-bedded fountain, from the side of the wintry brae, but lovelier than cornfields all waving in emerald and vermeil and gold are the heights where the north wind is raving, and the crags where I wandered of old. It was morning, the bright sun was beaming. How sweetly it brought it back to me, the time when no labor nor dreaming broke the sleep of the happy and free. But blithely we rose as the dawn heaven was melting to amber and blue, and swift were the wings to our feet given as we traversed the meadows of dew. For the moors, where the short grass like velvet beneath us should lie. For the moors, where each high pass rose sunny against the clear sky. For the moors where the linnet was trilling its song on the old granite stone, where the lark, the wild skylark, was filling every breast with delight like its own. What language can utter the feeling which rose when in exile afar, on the brow of a lonely hill kneeling, I saw the brown heath growing there. It was scattered and stunted, and told me that soon even that would be gone. It whispered, the grim walls enfold me. I have bloomed in my last summer's sun. But not the loved music, whose waking makes the soul of the Swiss die away, has a spell more adored and heartbreaking than for me on that blighted heath lay. That spirit which bent 'neath its power, how it longed, how it burned to be free. If I could have wept in that hour, those tears would have been heaven to me. Well, the sad minutes are moving, though loaded with trouble and pain. And sometime the loved and the loving shall meet on those mountains again.
Our section on winter begins with Emily Bronte's Spellbound, a poem guaranteed to bring on the winter blues. After that, we have the final lines of Shakespeare's Love's Labour's Lost, one of his early comedies. If Bronte's Spellbound is about the terrified inertia that keeps us indoors in the winter months, then this is a playful portrait of winter. In the cold season, the shepherd must blow on his fingers to keep them warm. Crab apples hiss on the stove, and an owl calls in the darkness. But each verse ends with a little portrait of greasy Joan, a domestic servant, keeling the pot, i.e. stirring it to stop it from boiling over. It's a little image of coziness and domesticity to counter the icicles' chills. We finish the winter section with Thomas Hardy's Darkling Thrush. Hardy was born in 1840 and died in 1928. He's best known as a novelist who nostalgically chronicled the lost ways of his beloved Wessex. But after 1897 and the publication of his last novel, Jude the Obscure, Hardy devoted himself to poetry alone. Darkling Thrush was written sometime in early 1900 and shows Hardy seeking for some blessed hope in the winter's dregs. To Spellbound.
Spellbound by Emily Bronte. The night is darkening round me. The wild winds coldly blow. But a tyrant spell has bound me, and I cannot go. The giant trees are bending, their bare boughs wade with snow, and the storm is fast ascending, and yet I cannot go. Clouds beyond clouds above me, wastes beyond wastes below, but nothing drear can move me. I will not, cannot go.
Love's Labour's Lost, Act 5, Scene 2, William Shakespeare. When icicles hang by the wall, and Dick the shepherd blows his nail, and Tom bears logs into the hall, and milk comes frozen home in pail, when blood is nipped and ways be foul, then nightly sings the staring owl. To wit, to who? A merry note, while greasy Joan doth keel the pot. When all aloud the wind doth blow, and coughing drowns the parson's saw, and birds sit brooding in the snow, and Marion's nose looks red and raw. When roasted crabs hiss in the bowl, then nightly sings the staring owl. To wit, to who? A merry note, while greasy Joan doth keel the pot.
Darkling Thrush by Thomas Hardy. I leant upon a coppice gate when frost was spectre grey and winter's dregs made desolate the weakening eye of day. The tangled vine stems scored the sky like strings of broken lyres, and all mankind that haunted nigh had sought their household fires. The land's sharp features seemed to be the century's corpse outlent, his crypt the cloudy canopy, the wind his death lament. The ancient pulse of germ and birth was shrunken, hard and dry, and every spirit upon earth seemed fervorless as I. At once, a voice arose among the bleak twigs overhead in a full-hearted evensong of joy illimited. An aged thrush, frail, gaunt, and small, in blast-beruffled plume, had chosen thus to fling his soul upon the growing groom. So little cause for carolings of such ecstatic sound was written on terrestrial things afar or nigh around, that I could think there trembled through his happy good night air some blessed hope whereof he knew, and I was unaware.
And so we come to spring, with Emily Dickinson's Dear March. Josephine said of Dickinson that she wrote short, but short does not mean sweet. When she died in 1886, aged 56, she did not have a single book of poetry to her name, and yet is now regarded as one of the greatest poets in the American canon. How did this happen? After her death, her sister Lavinia opened Emily's bureau and found over 900 poems, neatly copied and sewn together in groups. She tried in her lifetime to get her work published, but repeatedly failed. One publisher described her work as extreme. Josephine called her poetry extreme works of an ecstatic genius. There are several poems by Dickinson in tonight's program. They play with voice and character and modes of address, with Dickinson writing loving missives to insects, animals, and the weather. After that, it's Langston Hughes's March Moon. Hughes was born in the American Midwest, but became a leading figure in the Harlem Renaissance and a major poet of the Jazz Age. He died in 1967 and was buried under the Schoenberg Center for Research in Black Culture in Harlem, beneath a cosmogram which reads, "My soul has grown deep like the rivers." March Moon is lyrical and suggestive. After that, we have the opening of one of the greatest poems in English literature, Geoffrey Chaucer's Canterbury Tales. Chaucer, who died in around 1400, was a customs official, diplomat, spy, and poet. His masterwork, the Canterbury Tales, gives us a vision of late medieval England in all its riot, tragedy, hope, and colour. Its famous opening tells of April showers and the workings of Zephyrus, the god of the west wind. With the change of weather, the birds make amorous song through the night, and people are inspired to go on pilgrimage. We'll hear it first in its original medieval English and then in translation. We finish with a little poem by Charlotte Mew. Mew isn't as well known today as she should be. She lived in Bloomsbury all her life and died in 1928. Her work was admired by figures like Virginia Woolf and Thomas Hardy. Her poem, Spring, is a perfect display of her talent, being both tiny and precise. To spring.
Dear March, come in, Emily Dickinson. Dear March, come in. How glad I am. I hoped for you before. Put down your hat, but you must have walked. How out of breath you are. Dear March, how are you and the rest? Did you leave nature well? Oh, March, come right upstairs with me. I have so much to tell. Oh, I got your letter and the birds. The maples never knew that you were coming. I declare how red their faces grew. But March, forgive me, all those hills that you left for me to hew, there was no purple suitable. You took it all with you. Who knocks? That April. Lock the door. I will not be pursued. He stayed away a year to call when I am occupied. But trifles look so trivial. As soon as you have come, that blame is just as dear as praise, and praise as mere as blame.
Whenever I read this, I could only hear an American accent, so you'll have to forgive me. March Moon by Langston Hughes. The moon is naked. The wind has undressed the moon. The wind has blown all the cloud garments off the body of the moon, and now she's naked. stark naked. But why don't you blush, O shameless moon? Don't you know it isn't nice to be naked?
The General Prologue of the Canterbury Tales by Geoffrey Chaucer. When that April with his sure suitor, the draught of March hath perched to the rooter, and bathed every vine in switch liqueur, of which vertu engendered is the flour. When Zephyrus eke with his sweete breath, in spirit hath in every holt and heath, the tendre croppes and the younge sonne, hath in the ram his half course i ronne, and smalle fowles maken melodie, that slepen al de nicht with open eie. Så pricketh him naturen he courages, than longen folk to gon on pilgrimages, and palmes for to seken strange strandes, to ferne halwes kuth in sondre londes, and specially from every sheeres ende of England to Canterbury they wende, the holy blissful matter for to sake, that hem hath holpen when that they were sake.
The Canterbury Tales, General Prologue, Translation, by Geoffrey Chaucer. When that April with his showers sweet, the draught of March has pierced root deep, and bathed each vein with liquor of such power that engendered from it is the flower. When Zephyrus too with his gentle strife to every field and wood has brought new life in tender shoots, and the youthful sun half his course through the ram has run, and little birds are making melody, who all the night with open eye do sleep. Nature their hearts in every way so pricks, then people long to go on pilgrimage, and palmers who seek out foreign strands to far-off shrines renowned in sundry lands. And specially from every shire's end of England down to Canterbury they wend, the holy blessed martyr there to seek, who had aided them when they were sick.
I so liked Spring by Charlotte Mew. I so liked spring last year because you were here. The thrushes too, because it was these you so liked to hear. I so liked you. This year, it's a different thing. I'll not think of you, but I'll like the spring because it is simply spring, as the thrushes do.
And so we come to summer. We're beginning this section with a rollicking tour de force from Robert Herrick, the 19th century Anglican cleric and poet. Herrick was a royalist who lost his living during the Civil War, but had it returned after the restoration of Charles II. It's an unabashed celebration of the joys of early summer, and specifically the rituals of the first day of May. After that, we're transported to the 13th century, with the text of the earliest surviving English vernacular song, which is preserved uniquely in a manuscript in this very library. It's called Summerisse Kommen in, and it describes the arrival of summer, blooming meadows, singing birds, and cavorting animals. And when I say cavorting, I actually mean farting. The precise translation of the word vertith scandalized Victorian editors, which is why we're going to hear it in its unambiguous original. In spite of how its flatulent animals may have shocked him, Alfred Tennyson reworked Summerisse Kommen in the Throstle. Tennyson, who was born in 1809 and died in 1892, was poet laureate during the reign of Queen Victoria. This early poem, somewhat sanitized by comparison with the original, shows his lifelong fascination with medieval literature. To Corinna's Going a-Maying.
Corinna's Going a-Maying by Robert Herrick. Get up for shame. The blooming morn upon her wings presents the god unshorn. See how Aurora throws her fair, fresh quilted colors through the air. Get up, sweet slugger bed, and see the dew-bespangling herb and tree. Each flower has wept and bowed toward the east above an hour since, yet you not dressed? Nay, not so much as out of bed, when all the birds have matins said, and sung their thankful hymns, 'tis sin, nay, profanation to keep in. When, as 1,000 virgins on this day, spring sooner than the lark to fetch in May.
Rise and put on your foliage and be seen to come forth, like the springtime, fresh and green, and sweet as Flora. Take no care for jewels for your gown or hair. Fear not, the leaves will strew gems in abundance upon you. Besides, the childhood of the day has kept against you come some orient pearls unwept. Come and receive them while the light hangs on the dew locks of the night, and Titan on the eastern hill retires himself, or else stands still. Till you come forth, wash, dress, be brief in praying. Few beads are best when once we go a-maying.
Come, my Corinna, come, and coming mark how each field turns a street, each street a park, made green and trimmed with trees. See how devotion gives each house a bough or branch, each porch, each door, ere this, an ark, a tabernacle is, made up of white thorn, neatly interwove, as if here were those cooler shades of love. Can such delights be in the street and open fields, and we not see it? Come, we'll abroad, and let's obey the proclamation made for May, and sin no more, as we have done, by staying. But, my Corinna, come, let's go a-maying.
There's not a budding boy or girl this day, but is got up and gone to bring in May. A deal of youth this is come back and with white-on laden home. Some have dispatched their cakes and cream before that we have left to dream, and some have wept and wooed and plighted troth, and chose the priest ere we can cast off sloth. Many a green gown has been given, many a kiss, both odd and even, many a glance too has been sent from out the eye love's firmament. Many a jest told of the keys betraying this night and locks picked, yet we are not a-maying.
Come, let us go, while we are in our prime, and take the harmless folly of the time. We shall grow old apace and die before we know our liberty. Our life is short, and our days run as fast away as does the sun. And as a vapor or a drop of rain, once lost, can ne'er be found again. So when or you or I are made of fable, song, or fleeting shade, all love, all liking, all delight lies drowned with us in endless night. Then, while time serves, and we are but decaying, come, my Corinna, come, let's go a-maying.
Summer is coming in, anonymous. Summer is coming in, luda sing cuckoo. Groweth seed and bloweth maid, and springeth the wood anew. Sing cuckoo, you blateth after lomb, bullock starteth, buck varteth, murray sing cuckoo. Cuckoo, cuckoo, well singest thou cuckoo, nay sweek thou now anew.
Summer is a-coming in, translation. Summer is a-coming in, loudly sing, cuckoo. Groweth the seed and bloweth the mead and springeth the wood anew. Sing, cuckoo. The ewe bleats after the lamb, the cow lows after the calf. The bullock starts, the buck farts. Merrily sing, Cuckoo, 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 well you sing, cuckoo, nor stop will ever you.
Throstle by Alfred Tennyson. Summer is a-coming in, summer... Oh, I beg your pardon, I'll start again. He's not coming in at all. He's coming. Well, certainly not this year. Summer is a-coming, summer is a-coming. I know it, I know it, I know it. Light again, leaf again, life again, love again. Yes, my wild little poet. Sing the new year in Under the Blue. Last year you sang it so gladly. New, 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 new. Is it then so new that you should carol so madly? Love again, song again, nest again, young again. Never a prophet so crazy, and hardly a daisy as yet, little friend. See, there is hardly a daisy. Here again, here, here, here. Happy year, oh warble unchidden, unbidden. Summer is coming, my dear, and all the winters are hidden.
And so Tennyson's work brings us to the next section, devoted to birds. For him, the song thrush is my wild little poet, and therein lies the appeal. For time immemorial, we have mapped our human passions onto the songs of birds, seeing their calls as mirrors of our songs and verses. I could easily have created an entire poetry hour on the poetry of birds. From the 12th century Persian poem, The Conference of the Birds, via Chaucer's Parliament of Fowls, through to a wealth of romantic poetry about birdsong, much of it exultant and sometimes sentimental. We're going to start, however, with the American poet Walt Whitman, who died in 1892. Of Whitman, Josephine said, "Few poets ever caught life in language with as much defiant passion as did Walt Whitman. His Dalliance of the Eagles is a description of a male and female eagle performing a mating dance. It's actually hard to tell male and female eagles apart when in flight, so he may have seen two males tussling, appropriate for Whitman, whose sexuality is a subject of continued scholarly debate. Whitman's admiration for angry talons and muscular flight is a perfect counterpoint to Samuel Taylor Coleridge's Answer to a Child's Question. Coleridge was, alongside Wordsworth, one of the major romantic poets of the early 19th century. This poem, with its delight in nature and in the child's eye view, is characteristic of his work. Where Coleridge finds delight in birds' songs, the 17th century poet and essayist Abraham Cowley finds only irritation in the sounds of a swallow that has woken him one morning. Cowley, who must have been a maddening child, achieved feats of extraordinary precocity. At the age of only 10, he wrote an epic romance on Pyramus and Thisbe in a stanza form of his own invention. The swallow comes from a longer poem, Anacreontics, as in the style of the classical poet Anacreon. It's all quite show-offy, and it has a rather nasty reference to a story from Ovid. But at its heart, it is a poem about the sense of loss we feel when we wake from a wonderful dream. And for the final poem of this section, we're back with Dickinson again, and her description of the awkward walking and the graceful flight of a bird. To the Dalliance of the Eagles.
The Dalliance of the Eagles, Walt Whitman. Skirting the river road, my forenoon walk, my rest, skyward in air a sudden muffled sound. The dalliance of the eagles, the rushing amorous contact high in space together, the clinching, interlocking claws, a living, fierce, gyrating wheel, four beating wings, two beaks, a swirling mass tight grappling, in tumbling, turning, clustering loops, straight downward, falling, till o'er the river poised the twain yet one, a moment's lull, a motionless, still balance in the air, then parting, talons loosing, upward again, on slow, firm pinions slanting, their separate, diverse flight, she hers, he his, pursuing.
Answer to a Child's Question by Samuel Taylor Coleridge. Do you ask what the birds say? The sparrow, the dove, the linnet and thrush say, I love and I love. In the winter they're silent, the wind is so strong. What it says I don't know, but it sings a loud song. But green leaves and blossoms and sunny warm weather and singing and loving all come back together. But the lark is so brimful of gladness and love, the green fields below him, the blue sky above, that he sings and forever he sings he. I love, and my love loves me.
The Swallow by Abraham Cowley. Foolish prater, what dost thou so early at my window do with thy tuneless serenade? Well 'tad been had Tereus made thee as dumb as Philomel, there his knife had done but well. In thy undiscovered nest thou dost all the winter rest, and dreamest o'er thy summer joys, free from the stormy season's noise, free from the ill thou'st done to me. Who disturbs or seeks out thee? Hadst thou all the charming notes of all the wood's poetic throats, all thy art could never pay what thou'st ta'en from me away. Cruel bird, thou'st ta'en away a dream out of my arms today, a dream that ne'er must equal be by all that waking eyes may see. Though this damage to repair, nothing half so sweet or fair, nothing half so good canst bring, though men say thou bring'st the spring.
A Bird Came Down the Walk by Emily Dickinson. A bird came down the walk. He did not know I saw. He bit an angleworm in halves and ate the fellow raw. And then he drank a dew from a convenient grass, and then hopped sideways to the wall to let a beetle pass. He glanced with rapid eyes that hurried all abroad. They looked like frightened beads, I thought. He stirred his velvet head like one in danger, cautious. I offered him a crumb, and he unrolled his feathers and rode him softer home than oars divide the ocean, to silver for a seam, or butterflies off banks of noon leap splashless as they swim.
And so from birds to animals in our penultimate section, beginning with Philip Larkin's First Sight, about lambs just born. Like his poem, The Trees, which we heard earlier, it is also about the delicacy of hope. After this, it's Emily Dickinson's Narrow Fellow in the Grass, which shows her delight and fascination in the much maligned snake, an animal vilified for centuries. She describes it as a mysterious fellow in a moment of poetic kinship with the creature. After Dickinson's snake, we will meet D.H. Lawrence's. Lawrence, who died in 1930, was born in the Nottinghamshire coal mining town of Eastwood. Now regarded as one of the giants of 20th century English literature, in his life, he was vilified as a pornographer, principally for his novel, Lady Chatterley's Lover, and hounded by governmental authorities because of his German-born wife and his skepticism about militarism. During the years of the First World War, he and Frida, his wife, lived in near poverty in Britain and were forced to move house constantly. After the war was over, they began what he called his savage pilgrimage, escaping Britain and traveling the world. They spent time in Taormina in Sicily, which is where this haunting poem is set. And we'll end the section with Emily Dickinson's playful, "Bee, I'm expecting you," to First Sight.
First Sight by Philip Larkin. Lambs that learn to walk in snow when their bleating clouds the air meet a vast unwelcome, know nothing but a sunless glare. Newly stumbling to and fro, all they find outside the fold is a wretched width of cold. As they wait beside the ewe, her fleeces wetly caked, there lies hidden round them waiting too earth's immeasurable surprise. They could not grasp it if they knew what so soon will wake and grow, utterly unlike the snow.
A Narrow Fellow in the Grass by Emily Dickinson. A narrow fellow in the grass occasionally rides. You may have met him, did you not? His notice instant is. The grass divides as with a comb. A spotted shaft is seen, and then it closes at your feet and opens further on. He likes a boggy acre, a floor too cool for corn. But when a boy in barefoot, I more than once at noon have passed, I thought, a whiplash unbraiding in the sun, when stooping to secure it, it wrinkled and was gone. Several of nature's people that I know, and they know me, I feel for them a transport of cordiality, but never met this fellow, attended or alone, without a tighter breathing and zero at the bone.
Snake by D.H. Lawrence. A snake came to my water trough on a hot day, and I in pajamas for the heat, to drink there. In the deep, strange, scented shade of the great, dark carob tree, I came down the steps with my pitcher and must wait, must stand and wait, for there he was at the trough, before me. He reached down from a fissure in the earth wall in the gloom and trailed his yellow-brown slackness soft-bellied down over the edge of the stone trough and rested his throat upon the stone bottom. And where the water had dripped from the tap in a small clearness, he sipped with his straight mouth, softly drank through his straight gums into his slack, long body, silently. Someone was before me at my water trough, and I, like a second comer, waiting. He lifted his head from his drinking, as cattle do, and looked at me vaguely, as drinking cattle do, and flickered his two-forked tongue from his lips, and mused a moment, and stooped and drank a little more, being earth-brown, earth-golden from the burning bowels of the earth on the day of Sicilian July, with Etna smoking. The voice of my education said to me, he must be killed. For in Sicily, the black snakes are innocent, the gold are venomous. And voices in me said, if you were a man, you would take a stick and break him now and finish him off. But must I confess how I liked him, how glad I was he had come like a guest in quiet to drink at my water trough and depart peaceful, pacified, and thankless into the burning bowels of this earth? Was it cowardice that I dared not kill him? Was it perversity that I longed to talk to him? Was it humility to feel so honored? I felt so honored. And yet those voices, if you were not afraid, you would kill him. And truly, I was afraid. I was most afraid. But even so, honored still more that he should seek my hospitality from out the dark door of the secret earth. He drank enough and lifted his head dreamily as one who has drunken, and flickered his tongue like a forked knight on the air, so black, seeming to lick his lips, and looked around like a god, unseeing, into the air, and slowly turned his head, and slowly, very slowly, as if thrice a dream, proceeded to draw his slow length, curving round, and climb again the broken bank of my wall face. And as he put his head into that dreadful hole, and as he slowly drew up, snake easing his shoulders, and entered farther, a sort of horror, a sort of protest against his withdrawing into that horrid black hole, deliberately going into the blackness and slowly drawing himself after, overcame me now his back was turned. I looked round, I put down my pitcher, I picked up a clumsy log and threw it at the water trough with a clatter. I think it did not hit him, but suddenly that part of him that was left behind convulsed in an undignified haste, writhed like lightning and was gone into the black hole, the earth-lipped fissure in the wall front, at which, in the intense still noon, I stared with fascination. And immediately I regretted it. I thought, how paltry, how vulgar, what a mean act. I despised myself and the voices of my accursed human education. And I thought of the albatross. And I wished he would come back, my snake. For he seemed to me again like a king in exile, uncrowned in the underworld, now due to be crowned again. And so I missed my chance with one of the lords of life. And I have something to expiate. A pettiness.
B, I'm Expecting You by Emily Dickinson. B, I'm Expecting You was saying yesterday to somebody you know that you were due. The frogs got home last week, are settled and at work. Birds mostly back. The clover warm and thick. You'll get my letter by the 17th. Reply, or better, be with me. Yours, Fly.
And so we come to our final section. For many poets in earlier ages, the natural world has been a metaphor for permanence. It seemed to them that while human life might come and go, spring will always come again, begin afresh, 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 as Larkin said. But in our age, we feel less sure about whether the seasons will feel the same, whether our wildlife will survive, whether the songs of certain bird species will ever be heard again. The poems in this final section are an invitation to consider our relationship with the natural world, beginning with Langston Hughes's Earth Song, itself a love song to Mother Earth. After that, we're in the 17th century with Catherine Phillips's poem about carving her name into a tree. A poet and translator who deserves better recognition today, Phillips was born Catherine Fowler in 1631. At the age of 16, she married James Phillips, a Welsh parliamentarian. They had 2 children, but only one survived past infancy. Some of her most moving poetry is that written to the son, Hector, who did not live to be grown. The poem we'll hear tonight is about our capacity for barbarity in our dealings with the natural world. After that, it's Sarah Teasdale's There Will Come Soft Rains. Teasdale, who was born in Missouri in 1884, won the Pulitzer Prize in 1917. She died by suicide in 1933 at the age of 49. There Will Come Soft Rains is obliquely about our capacity for barbarity towards each other and the silent majesty of a seemingly oblivious natural world that surrounds us. And we'll close with Mary Oliver's Wild Geese. Mary Oliver, who died in 2019, was also a recipient of the Pulitzer Prize, as well as the National Book Award. Wild Geese is a poem of hope and of consolation, which contains the immortal line, "The world offers itself to your imagination." To Earth Song.
An Earth Song, Langston Hughes. It is an Earth Song, and I've been waiting long for an Earth Song. It's a spring song, and I've been waiting long for a spring song. Strong as the shoots of a new plant, strong as the bursting of new buds, strong as the coming of the first child from its mother's womb. It's an Earth Song, a body song, a spring song. I have been waiting long for this spring song.
Upon the engraving of her name upon a tree in Barn Elms Walk, by Catherine Phillips. Alas, how barbarous are we, thus to reward the courteous tree, who its broad shade affording us deserves not to be wounded thus. See how the yielding bark complies with our ungrateful injuries. And seeing this, say how much then trees are more generous than men, who by a nobleness so pure can first oblige and then endure.
There Will Come Soft Rains by Sarah Teasdale. There will come soft rains and the smell of the ground and swallows circling with their shimmering sound and frogs in the pools singing at night and wild plum trees in tremulous white. Robins will wear their feathery fire, whistling their whims on a low fence wire. And not one will know of the war. Not one will care at last when it is done. Not one would mind, neither bird nor tree, if mankind perished utterly. And spring herself, when she woke at dawn, would scarcely know that we were gone.
Wild Geese by Mary Oliver. You do not have to be good. You do not have to walk on your knees for 100 miles through the desert repenting. You only have to let the soft animal of your body. Love what it loves. Tell me about despair, yours, and I will tell you mine. Meanwhile, the world goes on. Meanwhile, the sun and the clear pebbles of the rain are moving across the landscape, over the prairies and the deep trees, the mountains and the rivers. Meanwhile, the wild geese, high in the clean blue air, are heading home again. Whoever you are, no matter how lonely, the world offers itself to your imagination, calls to you like the wild geese, harsh and exciting, over and over, announcing your place in the family of things.